But now, to shift the focus away from Hawaii student entrepreneurs and to Mylen, I want to open by giving a big thank you to Mylen for taking time out of her busy schedule to come in and enrich the future generation of entrepreneurs. As the demand for sustainability is growing, there's a lot we can take away from talking to someone who's successful within this industry. Mylen Yamamoto is the founder of Cropsticks, which is a sustainable chopstick with a rest that can be found in over 500 restaurants, hotels, and retailers across the nation. The invention has gained a lot of attention from different celebrity chefs, Fortune 500 companies, and also influencers with millions of followers. Most recently, Cropsticks launched nationwide in 247 cost-plus world markets. So Mylen will begin with a short presentation. We'll then move into a fireside chat with some questions we have already prepared. As Kirk said, feel free to ask your questions in Q&A or chat. After the fireside chat, we'll ask Mylen your burning questions. So without further ado, please help me to welcome Mylen Yamamoto.
Thanks so much, Amber, for that lovely introduction. And I just want to say it's such an honor to be here. Thank you to Kirk for organizing all of us, and to one of my early mentors, Peter Rowan, for having me here today. I also want to thank PACE Hawaii, Hawaii Student Entrepreneurs, and UH Innovation Center. So I'm going to get started and share my screen. Happy Aloha Friday to everybody that's on this call. I'm happy to share the honest parts of an entrepreneur's journey that's trying to focus on scaling a small business and balance both profitability and sustainability. So I'm Mylen Yamamoto, and my married name is Tansinko, and I am the CEO of Cropsticks by Cropmade, and we are a proud certified B Corporation. So those of you that aren't familiar with B Corps, it's the highest standard for environmental and social responsibility. So if you walk into a store and you look on the back of a label and you see this big B on brands like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's, we're very proud to be part of that ecosystem. And so those of you that have a business, I'm going to talk a little bit about B Corps in case this is a journey that you want to head into. And that's what the B looks like. Our mission is to leave behind a greener environment for future generations. That I think for every business, this is the mission that really centers you when things like a pandemic happens or when tariffs changes. Every decision you make ideally would want to be driven through your mission. And for us, this is ours. These are some of our customers, and I'm so happy to announce, even though we don't have a cost plus world market here in Hawaii, we are in all the cost plus world markets on the mainland. A little bit overview of our company. So we did launch in March 2017 with Chef Roy Yamaguchi in Eating House. And we are headquartered now in Hawaii with branches in LA. And we have customers all over the world in the UK, Australia, Monaco, France, Japan. And this is all done with a small, humble team of 6, a small but mighty team. And that was the overview of the company, but I want to go back to the roots. So I was born and raised in Hawaii. I think people, they're born into certain cards in their life. Some people are born into money, but for me, my card is I was born into a very loving family. So I think with my family here in Hawaii, it's like I can go out and do all these crazy entrepreneurial things, but I can always come back to my family and knowing that it's, I can always come back to my family. So I feel very fortunate to do that. I'm at Punch Bowl here as a kid, and my grandpa, he's buried here. So he fought in World War II in the 100th Battalion. And that's part of the inspiration for our mission, because I'm like, wow, my grandpa got shot in the head twice, and then he had like shrapnel in his leg. And then my dad worked for the DOE for 40 years as a educator. So I'm like, man, I need to, do something better for the next generation. And I think a lot of us are kind of thinking about that too. It's like, how do we keep improving generations after us? I went to Mauna Loa High School, and I mentioned how in my family, our card was a loving family, but we didn't have a lot of money. And so I want to share a quick story. When I was at Mauna Loa, we're known for a great band, Kirk knows, and our orchestra got invited to perform at Carnegie Hall. And to go from Hawaii to New York, that's pretty expensive. And so my family, they told me, oh, Mylen, that's super expensive. I'm sorry, you can't afford it. You can't go. And I was like, Mom, this is Carnegie Hall. We have to go. She's like, sorry, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go and bake brownies and I'm gonna sell them. And I sold them to the magic card kids who would skip lunch every single day. So they were hungry and I brought them brownies and they were my best customers. And that was an early lesson in life to always find your product market and fit. And eventually I sold enough brownies and performed at Carnegie Hall. After Mauna Loa, I went to Chapman University for 1 year. It was an amazing experience. We're right by Disneyland, and that was a lot of fun. But Chapman's really expensive. It was a private university. So I came back home. I went to UH for another year, and it was the best of times, except walking up the hill because you could get free parking up the road. I remember getting a lot of blisters from walking around UH campus. But I did want to go back to the mainland just to finish up my education there. And I did find a scholarship that got me to Cal State LA, and I finished my BA and my master's program at Cal State, Los Angeles. And looking back at this time, I really think that hopping around to my different universities gave me an understanding of how to build bridges between different sectors of your life. So, the friends at Chapman to this day, we still are in contact. The friends I have at Cal State LA, we're still in contact, and even became customers of ours down the line. And of course, UH, I'm here today because I'm also an alumna of UH. So I graduated around the time of the recession, and I applied to Starbucks, not in corporate, but as a barista, and no one hired me. And I was like, dang, I gotta get a job. So I ended up finding a job in Japan, and I taught at Aeon. So Aeon is a private sector corporation. You teach English in the private sector, and that was a lot of fun. That was my first time really living internationally, and being in Japan, I experienced how the mannerisms in Japan are very particular, where they have a hashi, and then the hashioki is important to have it together. So that influence of living in Japan really influenced what became Cropsticks down the line. After teaching in Japan, I came back to Hawaii and I started my first business, which is called Click Now. And Click Now is a talent management company where we represent talent with millions of followers. Yolene Dadong, she's famous for saying that her "Hello, my friend." She has about 10 million followers on TikTok. We have Stephen Lim, who's known for his BuzzFeed Worth It series, and the Fung Bros that have 2 million followers online. Anyway, this company started back in 2012 actually. And my first company, I would bring in influencers to Hawaii and I would produce shows like this OG YouTuber. I don't know if you know him, but his name's David Choi. And so I would bring David out to Hawaii and we would host these concerts. So that was a really fun time. The business is still running to this day. And this is another key part in the success of Cropsticks, because influencer marketing really helped propel Cropsticks when we launched our Kickstarter, which I'll share a little bit later. In running my business, I ended up back to Los Angeles because that's where a lot of the entertainment things were happening. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs know that when you're running your business, you also want to make sure that you are financially stable at the same time. And teaching really is my first passion. So I mentioned earlier, I got my master's degree. My trajectory in life was to become a professor. I taught in Japan, and then I taught some classes at my alma mater, Cal State LA, and then I eventually got hired into LMU. So these are some of my colleagues at Loyola Marymount, and I was a clinical professor there for some time. And in 2015, now this is where Cropsticks was born. So I was on an airplane and I was going to Singapore, and my chopsticks just kept rolling off of the tray table on the flight. And it was a really long flight and I was really bored. And I was like, okay, can we, instead of taking your chopsticks across vertically, can you just snap it horizontally? And that's where the idea to the Cropstick Rest was born. So I had my first business, which was an influencer marketing business, and I was teaching and I was teaching, but I had no idea how to turn my idea for a chopstick and a chopstick rest built together. I had no manufacturing background. I had no idea what to do. So I picked up this book because I was a fan of Shark Tank, and it's called Invent It, Sell It, Bank It by Lori Grenier. And if anybody has an idea where you want to turn an idea into a physical product, this is a great book to really take you from cover to cover. And after that, I was like, okay, I need a prototype. So I worked with a 3D printer and made our first Cropsticks prototype. And then because I was teaching at LMU, step 3, I wanted to test the market, right? So you all know this, is that when you have an idea, you want to make sure there's that product market fit. And I had my students, they got extra credit and they went out there with surveys, and I did too. And we would stand in front of like a Panda Express or a Whole Foods, and we just passed out surveys to anybody that would give us a time of day. And we would ask them, show them the crop stick and say, do you like this? Yes or no? And the surveys came back about 87% positive. And so that was an indicator to me, like, okay, they like it. And the second question was, would you buy it? And again, it was a high percentage of yeses. So knowing that, it brought me to step 4, which is, okay, now I need to find a manufacturer that can turn these 3D printed prototypes into something real. So I would talk to anybody that would listen. So if you were that person sitting next to me on an airplane, I would be that annoying one that would be like, hey, I have this really cool idea. What do you think? And then I would show you my crop sticks. And I would do that to anybody that would listen to me. And I got lucky in this case because one of my good friends, Jay Chang, when I shared the idea with him, he's like, oh, yeah, my family makes bamboo products. We can totally make this for you. And that was luck, but also just me sharing the idea with anybody that would listen. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they tend to like to keep their ideas really close to them. But I like to say the opposite, is that, hey, you need to see if the market wants your idea, right? So make sure that you get the right feedback, and then you could eventually network into finding the right partner. And Jay Chang, he manufactured it for us, and he became a co-founder of Cropsticks. 2016 now, we found a manufacturer, we have product market fit, and then it was like, okay, now we need capital. We need to get the funds to make this. So we launched on Kickstarter. Luckily, a lot of those influencer friends that we manage at Click Now, they're like, oh, Cropsticks is really cool. Yeah, we're gonna blast out your Kickstarter. And then it became a really cool snowball effect from there. So 284 backers, we got over 20,000, and that paid for our tooling, our initial patent. And this isn't much to look at, but this is one of our first machines that we purchased and built to make Cropsticks. And I'm proud to say that Cropsticks now owns this machine and the IP surrounding the Cropstick. And then we realized we need more money. So I found Accelerate UH, actually through my dad. He had a friend of a friend that introduced me to Accelerate UH, and luckily we got accepted into Accelerate UH. Peter Rowan was one of those sharks for us in our early days of Cropsticks, and I'm so thankful for that, because I never would have realized that one day I would actually be on the show called Shark Tank. So this accelerator really prepped us for just to answer the questions and get us thinking about how to really run a profitable, functioning business that investors would want to buy into. So one day I was walking around a conference in Vegas, and if you look at that badge, I have my Cropsticks in it. And it just this is another luck chance. One of the casting directors pointed to my badge and said, oh, what's that? And so this is a prototype. So I pulled it out, I showed them what Cropsticks was, and I think it was like 9 months later, we ended up on Cropsticks. So here I am pitching Cropsticks to the sharks with a lot of great training from Accelerate. And there's my husband, who I forced to be on the show. He's a handsome model. And that was, we did that right after our wedding. We had to stop our honeymoon. So we got married in September 2016. Those of you that were in Hawaii in September 2016, that was when the 2 hurricanes were coming to Hawaii. That was my wedding day. And then 2 weeks after that, we're on our honeymoon, and then we got the call to be on Shark Tank. So we had to cut the honeymoon short. If you're interested in watching that episode, it's season 8, episode 20. And they actually came out to Hawaii to film. So we were one of the lucky ones. We were able to get that package, the home package, and then they filmed it, and then we did the show. And unfortunately, we did not get a deal. I was totally devastated at the time because we wanted the money. We needed the money to continue our business, to have our business to continue. And the reason why, I remember Mark Cuban, he said this. He says, this still feels like a classroom project, and for those reasons, I'm out. And I was just like, no, because again, we really needed those funds. But we had 0 customers at the time. I just had letters of intent. I had 0 paying customers, and maybe we're too early, and maybe they didn't understand the Cropsticks, but that's okay. If you pitch and you get a no, just keep going. If this is something you truly believe in, and that there's a product market fit. And now I'm like, all right, I hope Damon John walks into a cost plus world market. He sees Cropsticks, or Lori Greiner sits down at a Four Seasons, or Robert Herjavec goes on first class on Hawaiian Airlines, and he's like, oh, those Cropsticks, I remember turning down that deal. So, just keep going. More importantly, I really want to just highlight some of our social impact initiatives, because as you're starting your business, you have a lot of power as an entrepreneur in the United States to really think about what type of materials do you want to make your product out of, how do you want to handle your shipping, and what type of social impact do you want to have on your communities. And for us, remember, going back to our mission, leaving behind a greener environment for future generations, we really wanted to do that. So I wanted to share just some ways of how we do that, in hopes that this could inspire you to eventually build out models that isn't just focused on capitalism, but also environmental and social impact. So there's many different ways that you can do this. And starting with the materials that you make your product from. So in the early days, I remember birch wood was an option, and we could have made it for 3 times less. But we realized that, okay, if we're cutting down trees for a product you throw away, then that doesn't, and the trees don't grow back. We need to look at more renewable resources. So bamboo was the best thing for us. We wanted to make sure that we weren't just doing things that we thought was good. And that's why we looked at our certified B Corp, so that we have a third party that's a standard saying, like, yeah, you actually are doing some good things for the world. Other things we do is we have an upcycling program where we collect back used chopsticks, and we can upcycle them into things like tabletops and flooring. So if you look at this system here, you have bamboo that grows, it becomes a thing like Cropsticks, and then you can upcycle it into tabletops and flooring. So we're really creating that closed loop. We have bamboo fiber straws, and we make our products out of recycled packaging however we can. And then looking at certifications, when you look at your supply chain, there's this thing called ISO standards, and that upholds like the labor and environmental standards that can go up to 9,000, 14,000. And we wanted to make sure that our manufacturing partners meet these type of standards. So that's one way that you can do social impact. And some other things that you can do is creating programs that support your community. So one thing for us with the pandemic is that, we're lucky that we're going to be surviving this pandemic as a company, but we weren't, we're not generating tens of millions of dollars yet. But what we do have are really talented photographers and people that can help market our restaurant customers, because at the end of the day, all this will go away, right? But your relationships will still be there. So we had this thing called the Sticking Together campaign. We went out to the community and did 16 different photo shoots for restaurants and gave them the assets so that they could go ahead and put it on their social media to promote themselves. So photography is not cheap, right? So this is a service we could provide them. We have a plastic neutral program where we do beach cleanup. So we did put about 15 pounds of plastic out into from our packaging. So we wanted to make sure that we offset that by collecting back and recycling. So these are really free things that anybody here on this call can do as you're thinking about how do you create a more sustainable company. We have our upcycling program. And then thanks to the OHA Connects Innovation Program, we were able to hire displaced workers. So if anybody's thinking of your company and you're thinking about becoming a B Corp, please feel free to email me and I'm happy to walk you through what that process can look like. And at the same time, not just being a sustainable company, but you want to be profitable as well. And we have a lot of our customers find us through their sustainability consultants. So there's not a lot of sustainable chopsticks out there, but I hope there's more sustainable chopstick companies. That's a good thing, economies of scale. So through their sustainability consultants, they tell the buyers find us, and that's where a lot of our, some of our customers come from. And the last thing I want to share is continually to think about how to diversify business is that we are exploring to see if we can create a closed loop bamboo farm and processing facility in Hawaii. Because right now we create all our products in China and Taiwan. We have no choice. There's no other place here in the US that grows bamboo and processes it. So we just invested a bunch of money to see if we can build an ecosystem here in Hawaii. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. And then that way we want to grow the bamboo here, process it, and then upcycle. I gotta drink some water. Anyway.
Thanks, Mylen. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to the Fireside chat portion, and Amber will take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for that background, Mylen. It's really interesting to see where you came from and your growth over time. And it's honestly very motivational, not only to me, but a lot of UH students. So again, thank you for sharing all of that. So you went over your background and we're curious about your future. So we're wondering, what are your plans for growing Cropsticks? Are you planning on maybe adding new products?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have diversified our product line. We do a lot of custom products. We have our bamboo straws, but also going back to the closed loop bamboo, we're looking to bring in a micro factory to Hawaii so we can upcycle all our used chopsticks. And also even build the bamboo industry here. So partnering with farmers to grow bamboo and then turning that bamboo into things like bamboo fiber, pulp, and turn that into packaging so that we can create these value-added products outside of just the bamboo. So you have pulp, and then the outside of the bamboo can become our Cropsticks, and then even making things like animal fodder from the excess leaves and things like resin that we can use as exports. So really looking at bamboo as a holistic crop that could be a sustainable model here in Hawaii and just really build an industry that will last 100 years. So anyway, we're looking at the financial models to see if this is something feasible in Hawaii, because Hawaii is very expensive to have to grow things here, and cost of labor is expensive also. But if the climate is right, if we can build technology around it and have value added products, I'm really excited to see if this is possible, and we'll know very soon.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting and a really good direction to go. So thank you for sharing with that. To follow up, we're also wanting to know, how have you collected your bamboo for your products, and how do you make sure you have enough quality bamboo as you scale?
In LA, we did a pilot program where we wanted to make sure all our restaurants were clustered together, and we focused on Little Tokyo because they have a lot of Japanese restaurants. And so the restaurants there would put collection bins, kind of like how they have they collect plastic bottles and glass bottles, things like that. So just having an extra bin for chopsticks itself. And then once a week, we would go around, one of our team members would go around, sometimes myself, and would pick up those chopsticks. And then we would ship them to our the headquarters of Chop Value, who turns that into like the tabletops and things like this. So this is made from these chopsticks. This is a coaster. And realizing that it's counterintuitive, obviously, to ship things to Vancouver, that's where the microfactory situation comes into play, where like once we get enough product market fit and customers, then we can bring these microfactories so that you're collecting right where you make it and create a local economy.
Thank you for sharing that. That was really interesting to learn about. So I really appreciate how passionate you are about sustainability and your attention to ESG standards. So something I personally pay attention to is greenwashing, which is the idea that companies are just posing to be sustainable for marketing reasons, but aren't really genuinely implementing sustainable initiatives. So I was wondering, as the demand for sustainability grows, how can we distinguish which companies are genuinely bettering the environment versus those who are just greenwashing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when you frame it of greenwashing, it's like, okay, they're greenwashing because that drives consumers in. And so anyone here that's thinking, okay, should I build a sustainable business? Like that's an indicator, like, yes, people are buying sustainable companies to the point where these companies are willing to greenwash. How to see if companies are truly a green company, or if they're just saying it to gain more customers, what you can do is look for those certifications, because I went through that certification process. It's very invasive of a company. We actually didn't pass the first year and we got it the second year. So things like B Corp, FSC certifications, 2% for the planet, 1% for the planet. Certifications like that can really indicate to you like, okay, this company did their due diligence and they're not just saying they're green, and looking into not just their marketing materials, but seeing how they're actively involved with communities too.
Yeah, I agree, because like knowing the standards and knowing the requirements it takes to receive those certifications, that's definitely something that can distinguish a company that's just saying they're sustainable versus one that really is passionate about that. So going back to your journey through entrepreneurship, we all know that for any businesses, the first few vendors are always the most difficult to get. So we're wondering, what did you do that attracted your first accounts, and how did it snowball from there?
I stalk them. I really pinpointed who I wanted to align our business with, because those first few customers aren't just customers, they're your ambassadors. They're the people that are going to get excited and tell their friends, hey, go buy that product. So for us, there's two customers who we really wanted to become our first customers, and that was Chef Roy Yamaguchi of Roy's and Eating House and Humble Market Kitchen, and also Michelle and Wade of MW. And so to get their attention, for MW, it was a cold call. And then again, talking to anybody that would listen to us, of like, hey, can we get an introduction to them? So it was both. And also eating there and talking to anybody that would really listen to us. So eventually we got a meeting with MW. They loved Cropsticks. They're working on transitioning to a new location, but they've had us this whole time. And then Chef Roy Yamaguchi is a really fun story, because I mentioned stalking, and it's half true, because I went to those food and wine festivals and I would share Cropsticks with a lot of his team members. And I would eat at his restaurants, talk about Cropsticks, share it with them, share it at the food and wine festival. And luckily, one of my good friends, Aya Leslie, she works for Hawaii Food and Wine Festival, also worked for Roy, and made that introduction for us. And by the time I met Roy, because I did all that stalking and planting seeds, he was like, oh yeah, I've seen Cropsticks. And luckily he became one of our first customers too. And that became snowball effect. He's an advisor for our company now, and yeah, I'm just so thankful that they both love the product, because those two restaurants, they were our dream customers, and now the dream's a reality.
Yeah, so it's really important to be a go-getter and very passionate about your ideas to really find those first customers. Um, Going back to your entrepreneurship journey, I'm wondering, was there a habit that you developed early that really helped your personal growth as a creative and as a entrepreneur? And could you share that with us?
Keeping in touch with your communities and your networks. So for me, I going to different universities just was an early practice, and I think students here or anybody listening, like, you're building your community right now, and you're getting to know people, and you're going to graduate eventually, and you're going to go do your own things, but still maintaining some type of relationship. And I think help that, not just keeping in touch, but also adding value to them. It's like you found a job, or there's a job opportunity with your classmates has come, because without my community, Cropsticks would not be where it is today. There's no way that I could have done a Kickstarter and not had the influencers who actually were started out as friends early on, before they became talent and had their TV shows and had 10 millions of followers, right? It's about building that relationship. So I think that's really important, even like when you're 19, 20, 18. So I was saying, yeah, when I was 17, I was thinking about like going out to the clubs and all that type of things. But as you're going out and making friends, like, just know that you're also building your community and your future cheerleaders.
So you're talking about how you're reaching out to your community as a habit that really helps you in the long run.
Yeah, well, reaching out, but creating authentic relationships and giving to your community. Like, UH is my community, right? So that's why I'm here. There's a lot of things going on, but I want to be here, and I like, you're my community. So if Peter reaches out, Kirk reaches out, hey, can you do something for UH? Like, the answer is yes, because this is my community. So think about, for you, when you are making your friends and building your community, how can you build that relationship? How can you give back to your community? So when it comes time for you launching your products and ideas, that's when your community will step up and support you. There's no way Cropsticks would be here if it wasn't for the communities around it.
Yeah, that perspective really speaks to me because I personally always try to help people the most I can. And just to keep up those bonds, just really like aligning with what you said. So I'm glad that you have that perspective and I really relate to it.
And you're a step ahead. Yeah, that's so important, Amber. And like, and you'll get back 10x. So keep it up, whatever you're doing.
Thank you. So our next question is, did you receive any pushback or doubt for your product? And how did you handle this? I know you kind of went into it with the Shark Tank, but if you could elaborate on more experiences you had.
Yeah, early on, I actually had some pushback on our sustainability efforts. I think 2016, we were maybe a little ahead of the sustainability initiatives. Like, we have Biden pushing the Green New Deal right now, and sustainability is a hot topic with all the climate change going on that's apparent from the fires in California and a lot of the droughts happening. So yeah, I got pushback on my sustainability initiatives. And I think, like, you do need to build a profitable company in order to do good and lean into a mission that you believe in, but really having that mission as your core, and knowing what your passion is really important when you do get that pushback. And to this day, like, if I want to define pushback, because you're not just going to get pushback in your early days, you're going to continuously get it. I want to build a bamboo farm in Hawaii, and we'll see if it's financially viable, and we'll see what we can make of it. But if I continually get pushback from it, and I'll listen. You always want to listen to your feedback, but if it's not aligning with your core value, then, and you believe it's gonna do good, just you gotta have that mission to keep going because you will get pushed back.
Yeah, you really got to find that balance between listening to feedback and your intuition.
Hmm. Exactly.
So, our next question, it kind of goes back to how you're explaining how you reach out to people and really try to form those bonds. We're wondering, how did you decide to build your team? How did you choose the correct individuals to help build your company the way you wanted to?
I think being familiar with my weaknesses and really helped to know how to fill in those gaps, like focusing on building our farm infrastructure. Like I don't have a background in farming. I can get customers, I can build a brand and really get the products to market, but there's a lot more knowledgeable farmers out there. So I know and I already have some really great farming potential partners. So knowing what your weakness is and finding a partner who's complementary to that, it's really important.
We're also wondering, what ideals and morals did you want the company to instill, and have you kept them?
I think it goes back to that mission, right? Leaving behind a greener environment for future generations. And if the moral is to continuously maintain that mission and keep the values, that's always been a driving force. And there's been times when some folks on our team that hasn't been aligned, and when that happens, there is friction and it does affect the business. So I think a job as a founder, as a CEO, is to ensure that your company's culture translates to everybody on the team and they know why they're working for that mission.
So, on the topic of values and morals, I was wondering, how can we as students and aspiring entrepreneurs better our community, especially in the COVID-19 environment we are in now?
That's a really great question. This is a tough time. I thought the recession was hard, like Starbucks not hiring me, and now we're going through this on a global scale. It's crazy. I really think about students at UH and just university students in general. Like when you pull out of this, I think you're going to be the strongest generation ever, and to be resilient through it. This is such a special group because the ideas that you're thinking of and you're building upon, this is your future generation. And I think Hawaii is a really special place because, when the pandemic affected our tourism industry, and being from Hawaii, like I see a lot of my friends and my family, they got laid off and they're feeling it, and that in turn, like, it affects all of us here on the island. So as you're building a business, like how can you build something that's not reliant on a single sector? So if we only sold to hotels, and it was a big chunk of our business, it would have been really tough to survive. But luckily, since we had retail, we were able to pivot into retail, and we had international accounts. That's really been the thing that saved us. And then also collaborating with like Huff and doing licensing deals. So as you're thinking about your company, think about diversifying. I think I wasn't thinking about this. I never thought a pandemic would happen when we first started Cropsticks, but now that you're going through it yourself, and I think any entrepreneur now, it's like, yeah, if something happens to one sector of the market, how can you pivot to the next one and start building verticals that allow you to do that? So, and also the last thing I want to say is, since we all are stakeholders in Hawaii, we're a stakeholder of Hawaii. It's like the ideas that you're producing, can this withstand a pandemic outside of, if a pandemic happens again and Hawaii relies on tourism, we're the number one a state that has the highest levels of unemployment. What's an industry that you're building that's not so reliant on this industry? I think the whole state's trying to think about that, whether it's in agriculture or if you're getting into the tech sector. if you're developing export products outside of Hawaii that have a value add, like what are these things that you're building in Hawaii that's beyond tourism? So I'm thinking about it, we're pivoting, and I hope that for your companies, you're thinking about it too, because we're really thinking of it deeply.
Thank you for that answer. So this is going to be our last question. Do you have any advice for anyone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur? Or is there anything that you wish you knew that you want to share with us in the startup phase of your venture?
I wish I did look at the diversifying the company a lot sooner. I think we had a harder time in our pivot because we weren't thinking about it so deeply, like moving from different market sectors, like going from just selling our product to licensing. I think that's like we had no choice now to think about it. So I hope everyone kind of thinks about that. And I think everyone's thinking about it now. And then also, if you can afford it, get an attorney to look at your patents. I think that's like a very tangible piece of advice, because I applied for my own provisional patent on my own and then realized I did everything wrong. And then attorney comes in and did everything for us correctly. And I was like, dang, if I just had it the first round, I wouldn't have wasted all this time. So if you can afford an attorney, or Peter mentioned that you have like these office hours from professionals, like please use them, because attorneys can get expensive. And I wish I utilized something like a resource like that early on.
Thank you, Mylen. We are now going to open the floor to questions from the audience. So they're going to have two methods. You can either submit your question in the chat feature in Zoom, and our team here will relay those questions, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question directly to Mylen. So we'd like to open that floor now. So we'll start with Kale. I can see that he has his hands up.
Yeah, hi Mylen. Thank you for your story. It was very inspirational. So my question has to do, sorry, it's about like the talent management business that
Yeah, sure.
you created, if you don't mind. With talent management, are you still in that field right now?
Yeah, very much so.
Awesome. Yeah, I was wondering, how did you go about starting that talent management, and how did you go about finding like your first talent as a client and building from there?
Yeah. Is that a field you're interested in? Because there's a lot of talent out there, but more managers that are needed.
Yes. Well, I mean, just my idea of it is like, I'm an actor and an entrepreneur, and I'm also a minority. So I was like thinking one day of creating a talent agency for specifically towards minorities that would represent minority talent. And I think that would be something that was beneficial, but I didn't know how to go about starting the entire process. So that's why, my question today.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So first of all, please do that. I think minority talents need representation that's really can speak to them and really get into Hollywood, and also to brands, just to get them excited about how talented they are. And that's what Click Now specializes in. So we specialize in the Asian American millennial market. And I got started basically as a fan. So I watched these OG YouTubers like Kev Jumba and Brian Higa from Hilo, and Wong Fu, David Choi. And I just started out as a fan. And I found, again, it's about adding value and building that community. So I stalked them and I reached out to them and I said, hey, I was teaching a health data lab at the time. So I asked them to come and speak to our students. And actually, when I think about it, that's how a lot of talent reps in my circle anyway kind of started, is that they would invite, when they were a student at a university, they would invite them to come speak. And that allows, like, in a very professional environment, to create a relationship with these type of talents. And for me, again, be good to your relationships and build authentic relationships as much as possible, because those authentic relationships years later, because I met them in 2009. So 2012, when I was like, hey, want to come out to Hawaii and do a show? they know you already, they have a relationship. You don't go, ideally, if you can, like, you want to create a relationship, especially if you don't have the credibility of talent management to just to have a relationship. So when you do find an opportunity, they feel more comfortable working with you to do something. So because of the prior relationship, I invited them out to Hawaii to do shows. And then eventually they hired me on for other projects, and word gets around, communities talk to, it's word of mouth. And then the Fung Bros heard about it. I brought them on when they were like 40,000 subscribers, and now they're at 2 million subscribers, and David Fung's going to be on Netflix with Ronnie Chang. So, it's really about building long-term relationships. And always, if you're a talent manager, your interest is with the talent, and it's always their best interest. And I think if you have that at the get-go, talent is going to trust you, word of mouth gets around. And yeah, please look into that, because we need more managers that represent minority voices.
Thank you, Kale, for your question. Does anybody else, or would anybody else like to go ahead and ask Mylen a direct question? So we are going to go ahead and read some of the questions that are in our chat. One of the first questions asked is, could you elaborate a little bit more on how did you find your co-founder?
Yeah, well, one of them is my husband, so he had no choice. He's actually like, I'm so thankful for him. He does like a lot of our finances and business development in the early days, but also Jay Chang. So the story of Jay, I talked to anybody that would listen, and he listened and also had a resource that could bring Cropsticks to life. So he became a co-founder. So without him, it would have taken more money and such a much longer time to build Cropsticks. I see Colby on here. Hey, Colby.
We do have another question. It's from Daniel. Do you start as a C Corp, then transfer to a B Corp once you get approved?
Oh, so B Corp is a separate, is its own nonprofit entity. So you can stay a C Corp. It's a little complicated because there's B Labs that has all the assessments for you to become a B Corp. So B Lab, they give you the test and do all the due diligence to make sure you're legit to become a B Corp. You can stay as a C Corp to go through that due diligence to work through B Lab, but it's on a point scale. So if you want to get as many points as possible, there's something called a benefit corporation. So that's another government entity. So we were originally a C Corp, and then we did transfer to a benefit corporation, and then had B Labs assess us to become a B Corp. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you for your question, Daniel. So one more question from Kobe. In what ways do your company advisors support you and your company beyond helping you find new customers? And are there any particular types of advisors that are exceptionally impactful for your company?
Yeah, Chef Roy Yamaguchi, he's not just a customer, he's also an advisor for a company. And when I have a new idea, I think we have a relationship where I trust, I really appreciate his opinion. So for me as an entrepreneur, I can share that with him, and he can give me honest feedback. And that's something I really value from the advisors on our board. So that's one way. Since he's in an industry that we sell to, he always gives honest feedback. Another person we have is Felix Bach. So he has a PhD in bamboo, and he's also the founder of Top Value. So that's the upcycling company. And so anytime I have a question on materials, things that I'm not knowledgeable in, he'll provide answers on that. So I think as an advisor, if you have an expertise, or if you're in an industry that is really beneficial for the company, you as an advisor is very impactful for the company.
Great, thank you for your question, Kobe. So one last question to end the event. So Mylen, if you were to go back in time and speak to a younger version of yourself and give her advice on how to successfully get where you are today, what would be some of that advice?
I'm going to quote Susan Yamada, who was in Peter's position prior. I remember the last day of Accelerate UH. I was like, we did our initial pitch, and she looks at all of us in the eyes, and I remember her words was, "This is the easy part. Now is the hard part." And that's something I will always remember, because what she said was so true. At the time, after pitching the idea and just getting feedback, and we really didn't have any customers yet, we're just getting feedback and feeling like that was a lot of work. Like just knowing that, hey, you're stepping into something that's going to be a lot of work and going to take a lot of time and energy, but if you really believe in it, then and it's profitable. That's the key thing, right? You want to build something that's profitable for it to be sustainable. Keep going, and there's going to be nights when you go to bed and you're like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is going to be successful. Just know that you're going to overcome it, and it's going to be okay. So that's what I would tell myself.